Remember this?
We see you, we hear you, and we stand with you.
All right, I have asthma, and that makes my lungs hurt listening to her breathy voice. That was the Republican Party, very poorly represented by Katie Britt, a junior senator from Alabama, who's just as bad as in her own way as the senior senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville. Yes, the Republican Party that once proudly draped itself in the rhetoric of strength and defiance and I don't know, human fellowship, perhaps, but of course they had to whisper about that part. So let's fast forward to today. It seems like the only thing we're hearing from the Republican Party, although in a very limited kind of under the radar way, is whimpering. The party that promised to back Donald Trump, no matter what, is suddenly not so sure about the latest economic developments because the pain is hitting them in their states and districts. So there's sort of a panic rushing through the Republican Party like wildfire. For years, of course, they've cheered on disruption and executive overreach. And now, with Donald's tariffs and spending cuts hitting their own constituents, that is, the people who will decide whether or not they stay in office during the next real election, they're scrambling to save face without actually challenging Donald directly because we can't have that now, can we? Challenge Donald directly, and Elon Musk is going to use his vast fortune to primary you. So let's see what's been happening in Katie Britt's state of Alabama since the election.
There's new alarm after the National Institutes of Health abruptly announced it will make cuts to biomedical research funding. Attorneys general in 22 states are now suing the Trump administration over the move, but it aims to set a lower cap on payments that universities rely on to cover overhead costs, equipment, maintenance, accounting, personnel. And while Republican senators have largely backed the Trump administration's moves to gut the federal government, what will happen when it hits their state's biggest employer? That is the question in the red state of Alabama, where cuts threaten the University of Alabama at Birmingham, which has received more than $1 billion in NIH funds in recent years. We're seeing similar funding fears in other states like Georgia, Nebraska, Wisconsin.
That's right. So people like Katie Britt are totally cool with Donald slashing funding unless and until it starts to have an impact on their constituents, or in Britt's case, the biggest employer in Alabama, which is the University of Alabama. Suddenly, she's out there saying that cuts to the National Institute of Health funding are, quote, hindering life-saving, groundbreaking research, unquote. So kind of you to start paying attention. That's, of course, not the only source of pain that Donald is inflicting on Alabamans. Let's see what educators of the state have to say about the possible elimination of federal funds. Take a look at this.
What kind of poverty are you talking about with some of these kids?
You're going to create your own.
I would be confident in saying that when they leave on Friday, they may not eat again until Monday.
For School Superintendent Tom Gambrill, funding is more than just books. The elementary and middle school principal is Jennifer Blankenship.
How much of this room is funded?
The entire room.
A third of all of Bell County, Kentucky school district funding in 2021 came from federal sources. A CNN analysis found the 15 states that most rely on federal funding for its public schools in 2022 all voted for Trump.
And I voted for President Trump.
I mean, you're an educator. You didn't vote for Trump eliminating federal funds
No,
here.
I did not vote for that. I voted for President Trump to make America first again. I do not think that's what the voters want. If we have federal cuts, then that's going to mean bigger classroom sizes. I would lose teachers, first and foremost. It's devastating for this school in particular.
I don't think that anyone in our county wants to cut our school funding. I don't think that anyone voted for that.
Do you mind if I ask who you voted for in the election?
I voted for Donald Trump.
First of all, there's literally no such thing as America first as a policy. It is a chimera, a meaningless chimera. So, kind of shame on anybody who voted for that thing that does not exist. Secondly, kids are resilient. What do they need food for? What, to like grow? This all reminds me of that old viral tweet. I'm sure you've seen this before. I never thought leopards would eat my face, sobs a woman who voted for the leopards eating people's faces party. Yeah, that's sort of where we are, except these are people who voted for America first. And thus far, in the first 25 days of this ongoing, unfolding constitutional crisis, every policy we've seen implemented via fiat or executive order or what have you is putting Americans last. Before we go any further, we have lots more to say about leopards eating people's faces and people voting for that to happen and then complaining about it. Please take a second to like and share this video. If you haven't already, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. After you subscribe, click on the bell, and that way you will be ensured to be alerted every single time a new video drops. Before we dive into more of leopards eating people's faces, please take a second to follow this podcast wherever you listen. And please give us a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Okay, so next up, we have Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. He's worried that universities without quote unquote big endowments will lose out, meaning schools in his state are going to struggle, while major research hubs in New York and California and Massachusetts will pull ahead. The message is very clear. These people, these Republicans who are in support of the fascists in charge, are totally fine with the chaos as long as it's happening to somebody else. Let's be clear here. It's not because they care so much about their constituents. It's because they want to make sure that their constituents have enough of what they need so they will continue to keep them in power. It's completely selfish and self-interested. If there's one thing I think we can agree, well, maybe not. Let's say hypothetically, Republicans always thought to do or claim to want to do, it's protect farmers, real Americans, unlike people like me and you, unless you're a farmer, in which case, congratulations, you too are a real American. But Donald's spending cuts are now directly targeting the Food for Peace program. Well, we can't have that now, can we? Which has fed over 4 billion people in 150 countries while also supporting American farmers by buying their crops. Now, obviously, most Republicans, if not all of them, don't give a shit about the starving people in other countries, but you'd think that they would want to support the farmers who get paid to feed those people. So, what happens when Donald tries to kill that program? A coalition of Republicans in rural districts is suddenly racing to save it, including House Agricultural Committee Chair Glenn Thompson and Senators Jerry Moran and John Hoeven, because their farmers depend on the program and they depend on their farmers' votes. They've even tried introducing legislation to fold their farmer fueled Food for Peace program, formerly funded by USAID, the program that Donald and Elon Musk have essentially destroyed in less than 3 weeks, and instead move the administration of the program to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA. Representative Tracy Mann, a Republican from Texas, said in a statement, quote, "For 70 years, Kansas and American farmers have played an active role in sending their commodities to feed malnourished and starving populations around the world. This free gift from the American people is more than food. It's diplomacy and feeds the most vulnerable communities," unquote. Yeah, well, nice try pretending that you care about the vulnerable communities, Senator. But the truth of the matter is, again, this is impacting a significant part of his constituency, farmers in his state. And if farmers in his state do not get this funding, many of them will go under. Now, Donald's tariffs are setting off even more alarms. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who is a diehard loyalist to the Trump regime, is literally pleading for an exemption on potash because Iowa farmers rely on fertilizer imports from Canada. Quote, Biden inflation increases the input cost of farming by 20% incline, particularly high prices on fertilizer. So I plead with Donald to exempt potash from the tariff because family farmers get most of our potash from Canada, unquote. You know, just the fact that this idiot used the phrase Biden inflation just tells you how co-opted he is and how little is left of his original brain. There's no such thing as Biden inflation because last I checked, Biden hasn't been seen in several months. Anyway, over in Kentucky, even Mitch McConnell, you remember him, one of the guys most responsible for where we are right now, is warning that Donald's tariffs could cost the average Kentuckian up to $1,200 per year. And since Kentucky is one of the poorest states in the country, that's going to hurt. Yes, Mitch McConnell, of all people, is concerned about economic hardship. Like, that's how bad things are right now, economically, for everybody in this country. Like, seriously, even Republicans are pretending to care. So Mitt McConnell has been stepping outside of party lines to vote against Donald's couple of Donald's cabinet nominees. Just this morning, he voted against Robert Kennedy during his confirmation to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. He also voted against the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard to be Director of National Intelligence. But of course, as a sign of the fact that Mitch McConnell, who had an iron grip on the Senate for so long, I don't even know how long it was, at least 2 decades, to sign that this man has absolutely no power at all anymore. So, in listening to the extent that he listens at all to those pushing back within his own party, Donald's message is pretty clear. I don't give a shit, is basically what he would say in his Queen's accent. He's set to announce reciprocal tariffs today, completely disregarding anything other Republicans have to say about it. And yesterday on his failing social media platform, Donald teased a major new tariff policy, calling it, quote unquote, the big one, in all caps, just in case you missed it. And he announced a press conference for 1 p.m. Eastern. He dug in his heels today, ordering that agencies should investigate plans for new reciprocal tariffs he believes could boost America's revenue. The reality, however, is that it's more likely to ignite a global trade war and add to America's rebounding inflation problem. The announcement came as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the White House. Donald has referred to Modi as the quote-unquote tariff king, and he suggested that India could be a major target or negotiator in the tariff rollout. Musk and his entire family, well, probably not his entire family because he has like 7,000 children, and many, many, many ex-wives, but Musk and some people in his family also met with Modi earlier today because why wouldn't he? Finally, hours behind schedule because do not forget, Donald has no respect for anything or anybody. This is basically what he has to say about his reasoning behind his so-called plans.
Paying the tariffs, and that's what people can do with us. They can build a factory here, a plant or whatever it may be here, and that includes the medical, that includes cars, that includes chips and semiconductors, that includes everything. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs.
Sure. The fact that he still has that Gulf of America map up there makes me feel annoyed. That's the word I'm going to go with. Whatever Donald is babbling on about, journalists in the room challenged him on how much he really thought this through. Now we're asking that question. Cool. And what information did he have to back this? Watch this clip.
Sir, as part of the reciprocal tariffs, would you also direct agencies to study the impact they would have on prices in the U.S.?
No, there's nothing to study. There's nothing to study. It's going to go well. The United States is going to become a very, very strong economically country.
There's nothing to study, he says, about the kind of mind-boggling complexities of global macroeconomics. Okay. I know we can't expect much or anything from that idiot. I get that. I get it. But he does still have control of things, even if he's delegating a lot of it. And basically, because he knows nothing and because he doesn't understand how anything works, really the only thing he can promise us is that it's going to hurt.
They'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance, but long-term, it's gonna make our country a fortune.
So Americans should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you said that. I didn't say that.
What if the prices go up?
Let's see what happens. Nobody really knows.
Let's see what happens. We're seeing what happens. We're seeing what's happening. Yeah, some short-term disruption is how he put it, which is just, synonymous with everything's going to suck for you guys, but that's okay because Elon and I are going to get much, much richer. If things do continue to worsen, who's to blame, you might ask? Take a look.
Oh, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much because product is being dumped into our country, and our farmers are getting hurt very badly by the last administration. The last administration hated our farmers, like at a level that I've never seen before.
At a level like I've never seen before, you're a monster. Okay. It's getting a little tedious, right? Everything he says is wrong or a lie or gaslighting or delusional or what have you. Nothing works the way he either thinks or claims that it does. And the reason all of this is happening is because of his absolutely poorly thought out, poorly reasoned, poorly executed so-called plans. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't care if it's going to hurt anybody. He just feels like he's doing stuff. And he's benefiting. So what's the problem? Right? For him, there isn't one. And to expect that he's going to put anybody beyond his own self-interests, well, if you still believe that after everything we've been through in the last 10 years, I do not know what to say. So while Donald is essentially shutting out the quite muted cries of Republicans with more tariffs, taking meetings with world leaders to push his tariff agenda, Democratic leaders are standing on businesses, which is the thing they shouldn't do because it's rude. Well, what am standing on businesses? I don't understand. So while Donald is shutting out the quite muted, frankly, cries of Republican leaders by promising even more tariffs and taking meetings with world leaders to push his tariff agenda further, Democratic leaders are actually standing behind businesses. One such leader who has been bringing it is, at least in this particular instance, Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader in the House. In a press release yesterday, Jeffries framed the Republican approach as, quote, unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American, unquote, signaling a tough legislative battle ahead. And who's really to blame, though, for the position that the Republicans are in? Well, they only have themselves to blame because for years now, let's leave aside the treason and the insurrection and the criminality and the rape and all. Let's leave all of that aside just for the sake of argument here. They've been supporting a guy who has demonstrated time and time again, one, that he knows absolutely nothing, and two, has been willing to and has been promising to continue policies that have adversely affected this country's economy and the global economy. their party's initiative to prioritize billionaire tax cuts over the American people is one of the main reasons we have been struggling so horrifically over the last decade. I mean, that's what this $2 trillion hatchet job by Doge is all about. They want to re-implement Donald's 2017, I think it was $1.7 trillion tax cuts for billionaires, but they want to up the ante even more now. Today, Jeffries held a briefing directly after Donald's announcement of the new reciprocal tariffs. And right out of the gate, Jeffries had a clear message for for Republicans across the aisle.
Republicans haven't done a thing to address the cost of living crisis in the United States of America. Not a single bill, not a single proposal, not a single idea. And the Congress started on January 3rd. What are they waiting for at this point in time? The reality is House Republicans and Donald Trump and Senate Republicans have no interest in bringing down the high cost of living. Costs aren't going down, they are going up. The price of eggs in the United States of America is out of control. It's an emergency, and nothing is being done by the Republicans in Washington or across the country to address it.
Yes, exactly, because that's the way they want it. And not only are prices rising out of control because nobody's doing it. Well, actually, Donald is doing a lot to make the prices go up. Nobody in the Republican Fascist Party is doing anything to bring them down. Although what they are planning, thanks to Musk and his ridiculous, unconstitutional, illegal agency Doge, is trying to make it so that people on Social Security, Medicare get even less money. So that's going to be fun. Jeffries was asked by a reporter to talk about what Democrats have planned for the upcoming talks on increasing the debt limit on March 14th. And Jeffries made it very, very clear who's standing in the way.
March 14th. At this moment, there is no discussion because the Speaker of the House has apparently ordered House Republican appropriators to walk away from the negotiating table. They are marching America toward a reckless Republican shutdown.
Yeah, quick reminder, Republicans have the majority in the House. They do not need one single Democratic vote to pass any budget they want. So if a budget is not passed and the government shuts down, there literally is only one party to blame because they have all the power. It does not mean that Democrats can't do anything. And Jeffries wanted to make sure that the public was properly informed and that the Democrats are fighting.
To make it clear that House Democrats are fighting hard to drive down the high cost of living, secure the border, while defending dreamers, farm workers, and families, and make sure that we are keeping our communities safe. At the same time, the people of America are understandably alarmed at the parade of horribles and the extremism that is being relentlessly unleashed on the American people by this far-right administration. We were told that grocery prices were going to decline on day one.
Okay, great. I need details, please. I think the American people deserve to know how precisely you are fighting those things. And I swear, I don't want to hear about border security anymore, for Christ's sakes. Can we just talk about how we're going to keep undocumented immigrants from being ripped out of their homes and thrown into essentially a concentration camp at Guantanamo Bay without access to attorneys or the ability to communicate with their families? Can we talk about that maybe? Can we talk about the fact that Donald's DOJ is making sanctuary cities illegal? Seriously, focus. Yes, prices. What's happening with immigrants and undocumented workers? What's happening to Social Security and Medicaid? Let's talk about that stuff, not the fucking border. Democrats, stop following Republicans' narrative. It will not serve you or us well. Also, okay, so Johnson has walked away from the table. Who cares? We know he needs Democrats to get a budget passed. What is your plan, please, sir? Jeffries continued to criticize Republicans for failing to address key economic concerns, including high housing, groceries, insurance, childcare, utility costs, despite their prior promises to lower the cost of living. I don't know why anybody believes anything that a Republican promises at this point. And Jeffries accused House Republicans of prioritizing tax breaks for the wealthy while proposing cuts to essential programs like Medicaid, nutritional assistance, and veterans benefits. Just want to underscore that the nutritional assistance is for children. And Republicans want to cut that, as well as Medicaid, Medicare, which I always get them mixed up, but I think Medicaid provides health care for disadvantaged people, lower income people, many of whom also children and veterans, that group that they claim to care so much about. Why do they want to cut those programs? Again, to give billionaires more money. All right. So listen, remember, if you're a Republican or somebody who supports Donald, the promise they made, you are now finding out, are completely empty. You, those people you love, those communities you serve, are going to be harmed. And some of us are going to be harmed grievously and irreparably. That, I am afraid to tell you, is what you voted for. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.